go after this stuff, what makes it worth it? It's got to be your passion. You got to love it, ladies and gentlemen. You got to love it. It's got to be what you are supposed to do. You want to sing, and even though they won't invite you to Carnegie Hall, you're going to sing to anybody that listens to you, including singing to yourself. I used to talk to my plants when nobody else would listen to me. You got to write, even if no one published your book, write, because that was given to you to do. You do what it is you're supposed to. You're supposed to build something. You're supposed to create something. I don't know how to do it. Learn. No, it's hard. Yes, it's hard. It's difficult. Yes, right. And it's worth it.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 15 of Angel Road Outdoors, the podcast. One of these days, I'm going to not do that like an absolute douche canoe, but that day is not today. Welcome to January of 2024, and it is finally cold here in Michigan. Where I live, which I've mentioned before, we have the extended urban archery season because I live in the hood. And by hood, I mean an hour north of Detroit, surrounded by farms and agriculture and state parks, but it's highly populated. And so since we do have high deer population up here, even though I never see any, we have a high deer population. We are allowed to hunt all the way through January in 3 Metro Detroit counties: Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb. So anyway, welcome to January of 2024. This is the first podcast of this year, and I want to say, number one, my intentions for this podcast are to release one episode every single week. Simple. That's a simple goal, Brett. You wimp. Why didn't you just make a harder goal? That's a kind of a hard goal. I know it's not a crazy goal, and a lot of people say, ooh, I'm going to set out and I'm going to do one podcast a week. Whippity-doo. Whippity-doo, Brett. You're going to do one podcast every week. All you got to go down in the basement and turn your computer on and press record and then push it out there for everybody. Yes, that is true. But I'm not kidding. Sometimes I feel like nobody listens or wants to hear me. Now, I know it's also not true, but sometimes I feel that way. And I know it would be better with guests, and I got to be better about scheduling guests, which I do believe I have one. I have a guest lined up on Monday the 8th, and I'm really excited to talk to him. And so my goal for the podcast is to put out one podcast episode every week, whether it's me and my brother, me and a guest, my wife and I, my son who has hunted before with me. I'm not really sure, but one episode a week. Additionally, I'd like to have more guests. I'd like to have guests talk about big deer hunting guests. I'd also like guests on that I can just learn more about them as human beings. We listen to a lot of podcasts that just talk about the big bucks that they killed, and that's really great because I love that shit. I learn a lot of shit from those podcasts. But who is behind the microphone? Who is behind the hosting chair? Like, who is the person that's talking? Who are they? What trips their trigger? What gets them revved up in the morning? What inspires them? What kind of music do they listen to? Who was their first kiss? Okay, maybe we won't go that far. But listen, I am not afraid to ask those hard-hitting questions, and so I look forward to having more guests on and learning more about the people in our relatively small yet large community of hunters. I also want to learn how to do, I don't know if it's Photoshop, I don't know if it's Adobe Illustrator. When I have one of my really good bad ideas, and the more you people get to know me, the more you will realize that I, along with my brother, are idea men. We have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of ideas. Most of them are good. Some of them are bad. Some of them are so bad that they're good. And most of them, I think, would really benefit from some sort of a logo or graphic. And I don't know that I can afford to pay an Indian man over Dot, not Feather, to create a logo for me every time I have a really good bad idea. I'm weighing that option right now. Adobe Illustrator is like $35 a month. I think by the time I'm done with Fiverr, it's like $50. So it's pretty close. So if I could just figure out how to do a halfway decent job or get AI generator to create logos for me, then maybe we'll go that route. But those are my goals in 2024 for the podcast. What are my 2024 hunting goals? Well, I can't remember what my goals were for 2023, but I do know that I had such an amazing 2023 that I don't really know, other than a few small details, what I want to do in 2024. I need to get more private access places to hunt in my home state of Michigan. I have one up the road from me, and it's terrible. I'm thankful for it, but it's terrible. Hold on, I need a drink. Then we have our 80 acres, which is in prime big buck country, that really just didn't produce this year. And I've talked about it before. The property itself changed when they got rid of the CRP and turned it into ag. And I don't know if it will ever go back to what it once was. I believe that there is additional hunting pressure on neighboring properties, which never used to be there. And the deer population was different this year. There were no big, there was only a couple, what I would call big bucks for this area, 130 at least. The majority of the bucks that we had on camera were sub 120. And not that couldn't excite me. I do choose to hunt the top 10% deer in my area, but when I would see deer in person on the property, I wouldn't have been happy with myself shooting them. And if I shoot them, then they're never going to get bigger. And so I took it upon myself to make that a goal this year, to not shoot anything smaller than the best small deer I've already shot out there. And so I let some 100s and some 105s and some 110s walk in hopes that they'll be 130s, which in my opinion will be in the top 10% of what's on the property next year. A lot of does. I think my brother shot 3, maybe 4 does this year out there. I shot a doe at the property north of me. I shot my buck in Illinois, and I do want to shoot some more does, and I plan on it this extended season. But for now, so my hunting goals would be gain access to more private property here in Michigan. I don't care what size property those are, but more private access here in Michigan. I just need more options, preferably closer. I also am going to scout more public land. As I have mentioned previously, I find myself now hunting public land near me with absolutely zero intel, and that is super hard to do late season. I went out yesterday and did some scouting on a piece that I thought was really great, got over to where I thought was further than anybody would want to go, and there were 3 tree stands. Fine, that's great. I'm not mad about it. I'm frustrated that I didn't go hard enough or far enough or do any scouting in the early or preseason. I'm very happy to see that people are using maps and pushing deeper into public and having the best opportunity, having the best experiences that they can. I'm assuming. It's nice to see that people are hunting our state parks. I hunted this morning with my brother. My brother and I went out this morning, Friday the 5th. We hunted some public land by us. Very pressured. I'm not naive to that. We have been sharing pins. We've been trying to get through this swampy area where we thought no one would ever go to. We parked and we walked way back and found some tree stands and some tacks and some flagging tapes. And I followed the flagging tape all the way back to the swamp, through the swamp where we had been wanting to go. And I thought, son of a bitch. We put these pins on places to check out, and here we go. People have been back here. And I don't know how frequently, but anyway, my brother and I hunted this morning, saw only squirrels, which, by the way, is a subscription-based website, onlysquirrels.com. is not nearly as fun as OnlyFans, but a close second, if you will. So, more private access, preseason, postseason scouting, public land, so that I know exactly where I want to go and how I want to get there for when I find myself needing or wanting to hunt public land around me. There's still a ton of public land around me that I need to scout, but haven't yet, because I try to sneak it in for like my 1 or 2 hours at lunch where I go for my hikes or whatever. I also want to hunt Illinois again. I might have mentioned before. I have permission to access the state land again from the same spot where I shot my big buck this year. My brother and I are going to go out there in early March and do some scouting and move some cameras around and teach him kind of how the land and the access goes, because I believe Adam wants to hunt Illinois this year. I'd also like to do one other out-of-state hunting location. Illinois is no longer my work territory, which is great, but frustrating because I can't parlay a mileage expense for going for a work trip and also a hunting trip. So whatever. And then I don't want to go to Kansas again. I love Kansas. I'll buy points. I'll buy points in Iowa, but I don't want to do Kansas again. I want to do something different. So Indiana, Ohio, Missouri, Kentucky, something like that is on my radar. And you know, I always have a tough conversation with my wife about hunt life work balance, and it's never ever good enough in her opinion. And so in my opinion, I was home way more, and I did not hunt nearly as much as I have before this year. But I also did some out of state stuff for some extended periods of time, and I think that makes it more challenging. Plus my son plays travel hockey, and so there's more things going on that require her. Like, she can't just sit at home with the kids. You know, my son is 10, my daughter is 13, and my youngest daughter is 5. So she can't just stay at home with the kids and be like, oh, daddy's hunting, we're just hanging out. It's like, daddy's hunting, and my teenager doesn't want to do anything, and my 10-year-old has travel hockey, and my 5-year-old is mad at the world because nobody likes her, or whatever. Just throwing a dramatic 5-year-old fit. So hunt life work balance is very challenging. My wife and I always have this conversation beginning of the season on what we try to come to an agreement on what is an acceptable amount for me to hunt. I never agree, but concede, and then do my best to accommodate, and then have a fit some point throughout the hunting season and pout and kick and scream and demand that I'm able to hunt more. And then she usually concedes and allows me to hunt more. And then there's some, whatever, you see where this is going. There's a lot of you that have had this conversation before. I wouldn't say that my wife doesn't appreciate the fact that I have a passion. She just doesn't appreciate what it takes for me to have this passion. And so that's where we find ourselves. And she would agree with that. I do believe that she supports me in chasing my passion, but I don't think she fully approves of what it takes to do that. And so that's what I'm going to do for the next 20 years of my life. That's all I have for like the goal section. I wanted to kind of finalize my Kansas trip before I stop talking about Kansas. So I hunted Kansas in 2022. Also, that was the first year I ever went to Kansas. And I didn't go early season. I only went for my week in middle of October, and really didn't key in on any bucks until the very end of my trip. And it really bummed me out that I ran out of time. And I really, really, really wanted to go back, and I never did. And I always regretted it. And so this year, my brother and I went in September, right after they opened. We were on deer. And then we went back in late October and we're in early November, and we were on deer, and we just couldn't seal the deal. And that's on me. Like, I should have sealed the deal the first morning we were there, but I hit a stick and spooked that buck. And that will haunt me for a long time. And so I told myself, if I'm able to, I will go back in super late season Kansas and try to do it one last time. Like, take everything I learned and try to put it all together. But I couldn't do it. But I did go. After Christmas, I went to Kansas on like the 27th, the night of the 27th. And my plan was to hunt the 28th, 29th, 30th, and 31st because their season's over on the 31st. That was my plan. And so I drove as late as I could Wednesday night and then pulled over and slept and then finished my drive in the morning and got into the northern part of my unit, which is something I was unfamiliar with. I tried to shave an hour off of my drive, hunt a new area, which was probably dumb, but I did it anyway. And too much pressure. There was a ton of pressure up there. But I drove around and I scouted that first morning, Thursday morning, and found some good spots, found some good tracks, found some good deer sign, found a lot of hunter sign. Like lots and lots of stands left in the woods. And you could tell people were there that morning and, whatever. Fine. That's how, again, it's public land. That's how it should be. And then I went, so that was the morning. So Thursday afternoon, I'd contemplated using Thursday as just a scouting mission. But when you get there and you're in the woods, you just kind of want to hunt. And so I decided to hunt Thursday afternoon. So I left that first location and went to a second location with a lot of good signs. So it looked very similar to a previous weehaw that I had hunted. It had ag with a strip of timber down the middle, a creek, a really heavily used creek crossing with a real big wide open scrape, like fresh scrape on the other side of the ag, hidden from the road. Looks like they're probably running across the picked cornfield, hitting that scrape, crossing the creek, and moving along. So I walked all the way to the back, walked all the way back to the scrape, decided to hunt over the scrape. I hung my set over top of the creek crossing where I could still hunt. I could shoot the creek crossing and I could shoot the scrape. Everything was good. And then right at about golden hour, the people who live behind the weehaw decided to have a party in their fucking backyard. And listen, I don't know this for certain, but they were back there on their four-wheeler and their side-by-side, and they were just going back and forth. And the kids were yelling, and the parents were yelling, and everybody was hooting and hollering. And they drove that their ATVs back and forth along the edge of this weehaw for a good hour to hour and a half. Now, were they just having fun? Maybe. What do I think they were doing? I think they were running back and forth to keep any deer activity down. I think the people in Kansas that live in Kansas and see big deer and abut public land shoot their deer and then don't want anybody else to shoot deer for the rest of the year. There, I said it. That's what I believe happens. I believe people who have private land that backs up to or abuts public land, weehaw, I believe they take their deer with their deer tag, and then when they can't shoot any more deer, I think there are certain people in Kansas who take it upon themselves to prevent anybody else from shooting deer that they could theoretically shoot the following year. Because I feel like those ass clowns back there were driving back and forth right at prime time to keep any deer from coming onto that property that I was on. And that tells me that I read the sign right. It looked correct. It looked like there was deer activity out there, and those people probably know that. And so I think I was harassed a little bit there, and so that pissed me off. So I packed the vehicle up that night, and I drove an extra hour and 20 minutes back south to the area that I was familiar with because it was sort of a little bit more remote. And I thought, well, I'll just hunt somewhere familiar. I know what this property looks like. I know exactly where I'm going to set up. And I did. I hunted the first morning and had about 5 or 6 deer work to the north in front of me, just a little bit out of range. And then at about 9:30, I had a button buck walk underneath me, mill around for a little bit, and then take off back down the creek. That afternoon, I set up back by a pond and got skunked. The following morning, I made an adjustment and hunted the same property, moved about 45 yards to the west, closer to where those deer were moving, and had, I think it was 4. I think I had 2 does and 2 fawns work from the north directly into me. And then shortly after they took off, I had a buck come in from the creek in front of me and work right through me. So anyway, I had made that adjustment, closed the gap, and was on the deer. So I saw four does, or 2 does and fawns, and a buck who was all busted up, probably a 1-year-old, 8 or so, 7 or 8. And he worked off to the north as well. So again, it was nice. I love this property. It's really cool. It's easy to figure out. It's just hard to find a tree to get into because it's so goddamn thick in there. So that is Friday morning. Friday night, what did I do? Friday night, man, I can't remember if I hunted Friday night or not. Either way, I ended up going to look at another, in the afternoon. That same afternoon, I went and looked at some other weehaw to kill some time. I wanted to just get my bearings on maybe I can find some food because I just couldn't find food out there. Like I could find the deer and I could find their sign. There was no food anywhere. There was no standing corn. There was no standing beans. There was no Milo. There was no nothing. There was a couple of fields I found had winter wheat that was just starting to pop up. So that was on my radar. Nothing else though. And there was nothing in my vicinity that I knew, okay, I could hunt this and the deer are going to come into and out of this for sustenance. I just didn't have that. And so that was one of my biggest things was how do I find this? So in the afternoon, I was driving around trying to find more. And I went and looked at a piece of weehaw that was tucked back behind a cemetery, which is, whatever, you can say whatever you want, but it's kind of weird, when you're in the remote rural Kansas and you park behind a gate because the cemetery's locked, like it's closed. You don't just walk, you can't just drive into the cemetery. It's so small. And you park and you walk around the gate and you go to the back of the cemetery, but you have to walk like 300 yards through the cemetery to the weehaw. And you can see that people have been in there, but I checked it out and it was all CRP in this little 30-yard strip of CRP with a little draw running through it. I bumped the doe out of there. It's probably okay. I just didn't want to deal with it. So again, no food. And so I went back to another one. And this particular weehaw had a very green wheat field growing. So they must have picked early. They had planted the winter wheat, and it had really started to come up really nicely. So it was a big green field, and it was surrounded by some hay fields, which I have heard are nice in Kansas for the deer. And I pull over, I look at the map, I look at the wind, I check I'm weighing my options. But Daddy got to poop. I mean, it's one of those things when you're living in your truck, Daddy got to poop. And so I had to use the outdoor facilities and went back to my truck and I made a decision that I was going to hunt here. I was like, this green field's got to be good. There's water, there's greens, there's woods. This has got to be a good spot. So I got dressed at like 1 o'clock. By 1:30, I'd probably put my pack on and I was heading out to the walk around. So I had to go way out and around to come in because of the wind. As soon as I got out, remind you, I've been here for an hour at least. Windows down. It's nice outside. I'm looking at my maps. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm eating my lunch, cheese and crackers and vegetables and some fruit bars. And it's just the middle of nowhere, man. Like it's quiet. There's a house, a crack house looking place up there, but it's just the middle of nowhere. It's beautiful. It's silent, dirt road. It's so nice out there how quiet it is. I get out. I start walking through the field and I'm about 150 yards into the field and I hear bang, 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 bang. Obvious gunshots, like handgun shots. Now, like I just said, I've been there for an hour. I've been parked on the side road for an hour. It's been totally silent. Nobody is doing target practice. Nobody is shooting skeet, skeet, skeet. Nobody is bird hunting. Nobody is shooting coyotes. Silent. Now, I'm standing in the wide open, in the middle of a field, visible to only the crack house. And I say crack, it could have been fentanyl, it could have been meth, it could have been erotic massages. I don't know. But it was a home of ne'er-do-wells. Mind Mark my word, a home of ne'er-do-wells. And so I'm standing in the middle of a field, and I didn't hear any bullets whiz by me, per se. Not per se, at all. I didn't hear any bullets whiz by me at all. But I believe that those gunshots were for me. Because there was incredible sign along this field, in the draw, in the woods. There were big buck tracks everywhere. And I guarantee you, I fucking guarantee you, that the crackheads in that house shot their deer already this year. And they don't want no Yankee coming down there and shooting one of their deers. You know what I'm saying? I don't think they want no goddamn Yankee coming down there and taking them deers. So, I, with chills running down my spine, acted like I didn't hear the gunshots, and I finished my walk all the way around the property, and I could not bring myself to hunt there. I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to keep my $50,000 truck out of my line of sight. I couldn't bring myself to risk walking in the dark, not knowing what was going to happen. I just couldn't do it. I knew that those gunshots were for me. Not at me, they were for me. Like, hey man, you don't belong here type of situation. I can't guarantee it. I might have just said I guarantee it. I guarantee those gunshots were me. I can't promise you that that person shot at me, but I can promise you that they did shoot so that I heard it. And that might have been a directive from someone who else. I don't know. I don't know who told them to do that. But I promise you that those shots were to get me to not hunt that property, and it fucking worked. I walked around the property, and there were giant buck tracks in the mud coming in and out of that fucking draw, out of the creek. I walked all the way through the creek and around into the hayfield. There was the biggest doe skull I've ever seen in my fucking life was in that field. Like probably a 45-year-old doe died. It was massive. Walked all the way back around, got my truck, and I'm furious. Like, I'm soaking wet with sweat. It took me like an hour and 15 minutes to walk that property. I decided not to hunt it. And so now we're talking, it's 2:15, 2:30. I'm 20 minutes away from that previous property that I'd hunted that morning. And so I said to myself, fuck it, man. It's only 2:30. Just drive to the other property and hunt that this afternoon. But my whole ride there, I was mad. It's not what I wanted to do. It's not where I wanted to hunt. I'm letting these people get the best of me. This is now the second time I've been harassed here. Why can't these fucking hillbillies just leave me alone? It's not my fault that their neighbor offered up that property for hunting access. Why the fuck are they taking it out on me? So I drove the 20 minutes to the property, got out, scurried my little buns across the fucking picked bean field, and I got to where I needed to be. And I was so up my own ass and in my own fucking head, I couldn't pick a tree because I was mad. I was mad because I didn't want to be there. I was mad because I was sweaty. I was mad because I let someone get the best of me. I was mad. I was fucking tired. I hadn't been sleeping good in my truck. I've been eating shit food. And I fucking cracked. I quit. I gave up. I literally turned around and walked back to my fucking truck, took all my shit off, and decided to go home. I drove all the way to fucking Kansas for like 4 hunts and couldn't seal the deal, and I let them get the best of me. And there's probably a lot more to it. Like, it's probably not so surface level. But I couldn't do it. I cracked. I literally broke and just got in my truck and I drove home. I drove like 7 hours, maybe 8 hours, slept for a little bit, and then finished my drive the next morning and came home and just spent New Year's Eve with my family and New Year's Day with my family. Just as much as I wanted to go back to Kansas and close that book, I couldn't do it, man. I really believed that I could do it. I got there and realized I couldn't find food, and I got discouraged. And then I started to get harassed. And you could say what you want. Maybe I wasn't getting harassed, but I believe I was. And if I was, it worked. Because I couldn't take it. And so I left. And so that's the story of my fucking Kansas trip. And it sucks. Because I would have loved to have brought one home. But here we are in Michigan, trying to hunt public land for the extended urban archery season. And really struggling. So anyway, thanks to everybody who has listened to any of my podcasts so far. I sincerely appreciate it. Keep your eyes peeled. We got some good guests coming up and some bad guests too. I'm not just going to have the good guests on. I fully intend to have really bad guests on and deliver real poor quality audio at some point. So stay tuned for that. But for anybody that has stuck around to the end of this 30-minute rambling nonsense, thank you so much. We will talk to you soon. Bye.